Cinderella. Cinderella wasn't called that at first. When her mother was alive, the home was different. Then everything changed suddenly, and yet slowly, almost without anyone noticing. Her father married again. Everything here will have to be arranged, she said on the very first evening my way. Cinderella stood quietly by the wall. It started with small things. You will take care of the kitchen, her stepmother said. But Cinderella began. You have no other duties, the woman cut her off. Then came the clothes, old, worn, practical for work. There's no point wasting nice dresses, one of the stepsisters laughed. With time, Cinderella stopped asking. She woke early, lit the fire, cleaned, and stayed quiet. You're always in the ashes, one sister said one evening. And from then on, her real name disappeared. Cinderella. Not because it was a fairy tale name, but because it was convenient. Cinderella didn't cry often, but when she was alone, she thought the same thing again and again. This won't always be like this. She didn't know how or when, but she knew she would not stay forever in that kitchen. One afternoon, while Cinderella was cleaning the ashes by the hearth, someone knocked at the door. Her stepmother was the first to rise. It's from the palace, she said. Before she even opened it, the stepsisters rushed close. The invitation was for a ball. This is a chance, said the stepmother, placing the letter on the table, and it will not be wasted. Cinderella stood aside and listened. I could go too, she said carefully, without raising her voice, as if asking the most ordinary question. The silence that followed wasn't long, but it was heavy enough. You? One sister repeated and laughed. Look at you. Her stepmother looked at Cinderella calmly, but her gaze was not gentle. Someone must stay home, she said. This house won't take care of itself. Cinderella didn't argue. She was used to that answer. If I finish my work, she began. You will finish it anyway, her stepmother interrupted. That changes nothing. Preparations began the same day. Dresses were pulled from chests. Shoes were tried on. Mirrors, unused for a long time, were finally treated as important again. Cinderella carry-handed cleaned after them without joining the conversation. Only once, when she was alone in the kitchen, she stopped for a moment, sat on a chair, and took a deep breath, not from despair, but from the tiredness of always being the one standing outside everything. The day of the ball came faster than Cinderella expected. From morning, the house was full of tension, noise, and constant instructions. The stepsisters argued over the smallest things, which dress was better, which hairstyle was prettier, which color would attract more attention. Cinderella was everywhere, tying, fastening, carrying shoes from one room to another, while tiredness slowly settled in her bones. Be careful with that dress, snapped the stepmother. It's not for rough hands. Cinderella said nothing. She only placed it carefully and moved to the next task. When everything was finally ready and the carriage arrived, the sisters stepped outside, wrapped in perfume and confidence. Lock up well, she told Cinderella, and don't forget the fire. The door closed behind them, and the house fell into a silence that first sounded strange and then began to feel heavy. Cinderella stood in the hallway for a few moments, not even sure where to go, because for the first time in days no one was telling her what to do. She lit the kitchen lamp, sat by the hearth, and stared at the fire. Outside music was surely already playing. Cinderella didn't imagine herself there. That thought didn't make her cry. She didn't go to bed right away as usual. The quiet in the house gave her space to think, and that was something she rarely had. She sat by the hearth longer than she meant to, because the silence made her feel as if time finally belonged to her. As she watched the fire grow smaller, she didn't notice right away that she wasn't alone. Why didn't you go with them? A voice asked behind her. Cinderella turned quickly, more surprised than frightened. In the room stood a woman she had never seen before. Because I wasn't invited, Cinderella answered after a short pause, and there was no way. The woman studied her carefully, as if she wasn't searching for an answer, but for a reason. Sometimes there's no way just means no one asked whether you wanted it, she said. Cinderella didn't smile. Those words were too close to the thought she had carried for a long time. I don't want to be rescued, Cinderella said. I just want sometimes to be seen. The woman nodded as if that was exactly the right sentence. That's enough, she replied, and it's harder than it looks. She glanced around the kitchen at Cinderella's hands, her clothes, the tiredness that could not be hidden. If I give you a chance, she continued, it won't be forever, and it won't be without conditions. Nothing in life is, Cinderella said calmly, for the first time that evening. She didn't feel like someone waiting for something to happen. The woman smiled lightly, as if she had decided something before she even walked into that kitchen, but wanted Cinderella to arrive at it herself. She stepped toward the table, looked around, and shook her head. Sometimes it doesn't take much to change an evening, she said. It only takes attention and someone who says you can. Cinderella watched her, not knowing exactly what to expect, but without fear. The woman lifted her hand and pointed to an old pumpkin by the door, one Cinderella had left there earlier. And that? The woman asked. It's just a pumpkin, Cinderella replied. Sometimes it's only a matter of perspective, the woman said, smiling. She touched the pumpkin, and the room filled with a soft glow, not bright and blinding, but warm like lamplight at night. The pumpkin changed slowly, without noise, without hurry, until in front of Cinderella stood a small but beautiful carriage. Is that real? Cinderella whispered. Real for tonight, the woman answered. Then her gaze fell on Cinderella's clothes. You can't go like this, she said, not as an insult, not because you aren't worthy. With one simple movement, Cinderella's plain work clothes became a dress that wasn't overly sparkling, but was light and beautiful. Something you could move in comfortably and still feel like yourself. Cinderella looked at herself, and for the first time in a long time, saw a reflection that did not belong to work and exhaustion. One thing you must remember, the woman said. When the clock strikes 12, everything returns to what it was. Cinderella nodded. The rule felt fair. One evening is enough, she said. Sometimes it's already more than we've ever had. The woman smiled, and Cinderella took her first step outside, toward a night that no longer felt unreachable. The carriage moved smoothly toward the palace, and Cinderella sat inside watching the lights appear one by one ahead of her. The palace was larger than she had imagined, but it didn't frighten her. When the carriage stopped, servants hurried to open the door. Good evening, one said with a smile. Welcome. Cinderella stepped down carefully and hesitated for a moment. Inside the hall, the music paused briefly, not because someone announced her, but because people noticed her. It wasn't only the dress. Who is she? Whispered a few voices. Cinderella didn't search for anyone's gaze. She looked at the hall, the musicians, the candlelight. A little later, a young man approached her, dressed simply, without unnecessary ornaments. Would you like to dance? He asked politely. Cinderella looked at him and nodded. Yes, she said, with pleasure. The dance wasn't perfect, but it was light and natural. For the first time in a long time, Cinderella didn't feel invisible. After the dances, they didn't separate at once. You don't look like someone who loves balls, he said after watching the dancers for a while. I'm not sure I know what people who love balls look like, Cinderella replied, but I'm curious to be here. He smiled, not the kind of smile meant to impress, but one that showed he enjoyed the conversation. Most people come with a clear goal, he said, to be noticed. I came to see what's beyond the walls of one house, Cinderella answered. He looked at her with curiosity. So you're not here because of me? He asked. No, Cinderella said honestly, but I don't regret meeting you. He laughed quietly. That's refreshing, he said. Most conversations tonight sound the same. Cinderella glanced across the hall and noticed her stepsisters passing nearby, busy speaking loudly and looking around without recognizing her. It didn't hurt her. Sometimes people don't see what they don't expect, she said. Maybe that's why it's worth stepping out of your usual role, he replied. Then, somewhere in the distance, the clock marked another hour. Cinderella lifted her eyes, this time with more attention. I have to leave soon, she said. Already? He asked, surprised. Yes, she answered, but that doesn't make the evening less real. He didn't stop her. He only nodded as if he understood more than she had said. As the music continued and people laughed, Cinderella felt a pressure inside her like a thought she could not ignore. "What time is it?" she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The clock struck, once, then again. Cinderella stood up. "I have to go," she said, and now her voice carried decision. "Now?" the young man asked, surprised. "Yes," she said. "If I stay longer, I will regret it." He didn't fully understand her words, but he felt it wasn't a whim. Cinderella turned and walked toward the exit. People shifted. Some followed her with their eyes. Others tried to stop her with questions, but she did not stop. Her steps echoed down the stairs. Her dress flowed around her. On the last step, one of her shoes slipped off and stayed there, among light and music. Cinderella turned for a moment, looked at it, then looked at the door. "No time," she whispered, and ran on. Outside, the night was quieter. The carriage was waiting. As she moved away from the palace, Cinderella did not look back because she knew the evening was real precisely because it had an end. Morning came in the most ordinary way. For a moment, it seemed like the ball had been only a dream that vanished with the night. She got up, put on her old clothes, and went to the kitchen where the same duties waited: light the fire, sweep the floor, prepare breakfast. As she worked, Cinderella remembered the hall, the music, the conversation, not with sadness, but with the feeling that something inside her had shifted. She knew the world outside that house existed, and it was no longer only a place from stories. A little later, the stepsisters returned, speaking over each other. "She was everywhere," said one. Cinderella stayed silent as she set the table. She didn't ask questions. The stepmother cut them off with a short look. "Enough," she said. The day began. Cinderella returned to her work, but now her movements were steadier. By midday, the house filled with unusual movement. "Did you hear?" she asked her daughters. "The prince has ordered them to visit every house." "Why?" one stepsister asked. "Because of the shoe," the stepmother replied. "They're looking for the girl from the ball." Cinderella froze for a moment with the bowl in her hands, then set it down carefully and kept working as if the news did not touch her. "The shoe is small," said the other sister, "but it will fit me." The stepmother nodded. "It will fit one of you," she said. "You only have to try." Not long after, someone knocked at the door. "By order of the prince," one said, "every young lady must try the shoe." The sisters lined up. "Perhaps there is someone else," the messenger said, looking around. The stepmother turned quickly. "No," she said, "that is all." Cinderella lifted her head. "I can try," she said calmly. Silence filled the room. "That is unnecessary," she snapped. "She has no place here." But the messenger smiled faintly. "The order is clear," he said. "Every young lady." Cinderella sat down and slipped the shoe on. It fit perfectly, like it had always belonged to her. No one spoke for a moment. "It seems we found her," said the messenger. Cinderella lifted her eyes without a smile, without hurry, because she knew this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something new. After the shoe fit, a strange quiet remained in the room, the kind that comes when everyone understands something important has happened but doesn't yet know how to accept it. The palace messengers exchanged glances, then looked again at Cinderella as if trying to connect the girl before them with the girl from the ball. "This is her," one said. "There is no doubt." The stepsisters stood still. The stepmother stepped forward with a smile that tried to look confident, but did not succeed. "There must be a mistake," she said. "This girl grew up in this house. We know her well." Cinderella stood and looked at her stepmother calmly, without challenge, but without stepping back. "Yes," she said, "you know me as you decided I should be. But that isn't everything I am." The messengers nodded. "The prince wishes to meet her in person," the other added. "Today." Those words changed the air. Now it was no longer about a shoe, it was about a choice that could not be taken back. "She has no suitable clothes," the stepmother tried again. "That is not a problem," the messenger replied. "The palace will take care of it." Cinderella looked at the sisters. They said nothing, but their eyes held more surprise than anger. "Are you ready?" the messenger asked. Cinderella took a breath and nodded. When she stepped over the threshold, she did not turn back. When Cinderella returned through the palace gates in daylight, everything looked different from that night. The prince waited for her in a smaller room. No music, no guests, and greeted her the way you greet someone you respect. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I wanted to speak with you in peace." Cinderella nodded and sat across from him. She wasn't there to look anymore. She was there to speak. "I searched for you not because of the shoe," he continued. "It was only a sign that I had met someone with whom my conversation was real. And I didn't come because of the palace," Cinderella said, "but because I want to be heard." The prince smiled, as if those were exactly the words he had expected. "I don't want to promise things I don't yet understand," he said, "but I would like to know you, if you want that too." Cinderella thought of the house she had left, of the work she knew too well, and of the evening that had shown her the world could be different. "I want that," she said, "but only if I can remain myself." "That's the only thing that matters," he answered. This was not a fairy tale conversation that promises happiness on the first day. Cinderella left the room with the feeling that this time no one else was deciding for her, and that was enough. After her visit to the palace, Cinderella did not feel like someone who had won a prize. She didn't rush to change everything around her because she already knew the most important change had happened inside her. The prince did not promise miracles, and she did not ask for them. The house Cinderella had left no longer had power over her. The shoe remained a memory of one evening that showed her the world was larger than it looked from a kitchen and a hearth. But the real change was not in the shoe, not in the dress. It was in this. Cinderella no longer allowed anyone else to decide who she was. And so the story ended not with glitter but with confidence.